Okay, people, I am back. I don't know if this counts as late. I feel like I'm a little late. I kind of got sick, so I didn't do a video, but I'm not sick now. Your boy didn't die. So what do we have? What am I coming back with? Well, since since there was a hiccup, I picked a book that I had already read, and it's Red Storm Rising by Thomas Clancy. That's right, Tom Clancy himself. Okay. I think if you've been to any kind of used bookstore, secondhand store, anything like that, you've seen a Tom Clancy book. They printed about 50 billion, okay, in English alone. I don't know about other countries. These Cracker Jacks are everywhere. I think I got I think I got at least 3 here, different Tom Clancy books. They're all this thick, right? It's the first thing everyone notices. They're like, "Oh man, Thomas Clancy can write a mess of something. I don't know what's going on in there, right?" But then you sort of figure out real quick he's got a military slant. That's his angle. Does a great job. Okay, so I think this is the first Tom Clancy book that I've actually read. I think I've seen more movies than books, to be honest. Yeah, I think it is. It's a great book. But let's get into it. First, okay, so like if you wanted to buy it new, right? I don't think you would have no problem with that. Hardback, paperbacks, mass editions, anywhere from like 8 to like 20, probably brand new hardback, big units. No problem at all getting your hands on these. If you want the route I went, I think I got this at a Goodwill for like $1, right? Just super, mega value, let's say. You can't beat that with a stick. I almost don't care how bad the book is. If it's $1, I'll take that mess. But this one's a good book. What would I rate it? 3. I'm gonna rate it a 3. I don't think it's so great, in any way that he writes to make someone leave the genre they like to read it. I think if you're into, like, if you've seen like a 3-hour documentary on Guadalcanal, if you watch all the specials on World War II, right? If you're into war history, if you're into history, war history, you'll definitely like this book, I think. There's no doubt. And it's because sort of the way he writes. He takes a lot. It's not real, right? What happens in the book isn't real. But what happens in the book could be real. He takes all of the rules that we have. We have these missiles, we have these jets, the Russians have this and this. He takes all of the rules as they stand and sort of like war games it, right? But then fills in the war game with character and story, like so it's actually real. It's a very fun book. So much so that even when I was done, I wanted to read Red Storm Rising 2, right? I wanted to continue. I wanted to let's play this out. What happens to the world after these events? I was very interested. But I don't think he did a second one. He just did the one. A little bit. What are you going to do? But I give it a 3. If you like these things, I think you'll like it. He's not the greatest, let's say, writer, but he doesn't have to be because of what he brings to the table is no one else brings. Okay, so we start the book with a terrorist attack, Muslims attack Soviet oil fields in the Persian Gulf. Yeah. So what happens is they just don't like all the foreigners or some mess, right? He doesn't really harp on it. Just they're radical Muslims. They blow up some things, and then the weather sort of catches and like burns the whole field down, the whole oil field. And very early, I think the second chapter in, we cut from this event of these people, which we never go back to. The terrorists aren't a part of this story afterwards. After like literally like 12 pages in, they're gone, right? They don't really matter for the story, but it's part of what he does, the realism. And it happens in actual history. Random events offset major events, right? This is how, you know, uh, the old WW1 starts. Old Ferdinand got shot, and then this chain of events happens that spools out of control. So he has these terrorists start this. We then cut to NORAD, and they see all this fire going. And he establishes it early because he continues it. He'll cut like one event happens, and he'll show 4 or 5 different viewpoints of the same event. NORAD, the Pentagon, Moscow, general over here, admiral on this boat, all these things. And some of them don't play back in, but, like if an admiral thinks a certain thing, he'll tell the chain of command, and that affects our people in the story. So it affects our people, but it's not a constant thread. So there's a lot of which, if he would write like one of these for World War II, he could do a great job because it's an excellent way to follow the complex events of an actual war. Without getting bogged down in history, how do you tell me what happened in World War II, right? Without just going on a tangent and giving me 56 hours of Winston Churchill, which he would deserve, mind you. Winston Churchill deserves 56 hours, but then so does FDR, right? So does Stalin. So does Hitler. And you get bogged down by history sometimes. So if someone did a version of history this way and just kept intercutting, that would work magically. And it works very well here. So he establishes this early and continues it throughout the book. Right? So we go from this catalyst to the USSR, the Politburo. I think that's what they call it. The Politburo for the USSR, Soviet Ruski, was like their political head, right? Like, so you get maybe 15, 20 guys actually. How they deal with each other determines who would just like assassinate who or get who ousted that then would run the country after oh my god, I forget his name. Of course, after Stalin, the guy who follows Stalin was some other guy. I forget his name. They didn't. If it's a time in this book, I don't think they had a strong "I'm the big machismo in charge," right? So sort of the Politburo is running it. You have to convince this group of men something, right? So they meet. I heard some kind of disaster happened. They meet. What's up? He goes, oil field got jacked, bro. They're like, what does it mean? How long till we fix it? I don't know, like 3 months, maybe 3 years, right? It's like 3 months to get the thing working, but like 3 years to go back to what we had with all the oil. And they're like, we'll make the dudes work harder. And they're like, you can't work hard enough to like unburn an oil field. It's not about work. That's what he tells them. Which is realistic, right? The way Tom Clancy describes it is to what we know. I mean, I don't think anyone took minutes, right? We're not dictating what these fools were saying. It was behind the Iron Curtain. But essentially, this is how these people acted. When we meet, who's to blame? Meaning, who am I going to send to Siberia so that I can have more political power? No one? All right, so what do we do about it? Well, so then what they have is a situation where we got like, I don't know, however many million Russians who believe in communism, meaning y'all keep me warm, y'all keep me fed, I toe the line, I work for everyone, right? That's the sort of the myth here. We're not going to have enough oil. There's no way around that. So, on the one hand, we have a massive populace who would need oil to not freeze in the winter. We can't get it to them. So we either go get the oil, which is war, or we buy the oil. Now, for the Politburo, because everything with these fools, and this is real to life, was politics. I mean, just deep, entrenched, any kind of angle they could take, they're taking it. So in their heads, the Russian mind, if the West knows I need the oil, they got me over a barrel, and they're gonna hammer away. I'm not gonna have that. So that really doesn't enter into their mind to buy the oil. So they're like, we got to go to war. We have to take the rest of the Persian oil fields that are there. Now this isn't 2020, right? 22, whatever. It's back in the day, but I believe I think set sometime after. He doesn't really give dates. At least I don't remember them. They're not a major point. But it's sometime I believe like after the fall of the wall in Germany, right? So it's sometime in the 80s, I would say. I don't think there's the two Germanys here. So NATO's young, Germany's kind of young, Russia's strong, at least believed to be strong. America's strong, but we don't have this endless presence. So those are sort of the setup, right? And so their idea is if we invade the oil fields and take them from the Saudis, which we have the ability, we're Russia, then America will nuke us. It's too bold of aggression, and you can't have the nuke because then we lose. Might as well, might as well all freeze to death in the winter with no oil. So their idea is to destabilize NATO, make it a mess, then in the midst of this mess, take the oil fields. And in that sense, it would be too unstable for America to attack us for the oil without a strong Europe, let's say. That's their thinking. And their KGB, according to this Politburo, has the wherewithal to offset these countries, make them fight against each other, or however that's going to go. So they're going to war, right? And he intercuts this with, you know, our people, Washington, our CIA. We're watching the Russians, and at some point, one of them sees like too many batteries getting made, or three different shifts at a battery plant, working nonstop, and no one else notices, but this one guy notices, and he says, like, well, what does that mean? I don't know. Maybe they just need a lot of batteries. Well, what needs batteries? And we're like, well, cars, tanks, submarines, yada yada yada. And we start our CIA starts chewing the fat on what this might mean, on what's happening, right? And so this is the makings of what's happening. He introduces people along the way that we follow throughout. It's very very fun. What then he has the Russians do is they come out, and this is also true, very true to life. I have like a biography of other people who had to deal with the Ruskies. Their like foreign minister comes out just unannounced And he's telling everyone it's time that Russia wants to have conversations about, you know, de-armament, meaning we're going to lower the number of nukes because in the 80s, right, this is a massive deal. Everyone's constantly afraid of, it's everyone getting nuked, right? So you hide under your desk, which would do nothing, but that's what they told the kids. Actual history, like real life. So this is a thing the Russians would have done. They didn't mean it, obviously. It's you start a process to mask a process to then have more chaos rule so that your objectives can get done and your enemy's objectives cannot get done. It's how they thought. They were very conniving, extremely conniving. And read any book on Russia, and that's how Soviet Russia was, right? So they're starting this. Our intelligence is seeing that, and no one's really sure. Sorry about that. I think I had a slight interruption. Okay, where was I? All right. So he then shows us, which is also very true to life, some of the Russians training some of his guys, right? And I mean, it's just like you think it would happen, just like it's described in other books that I have. I should have brought it close. I have one on Monty, who was running the field marshal of the war in World War II. Yeah, you just get the guys and you just go to like to a field and have them run around, right, and then yell at them. So basically, right, it's literally training. You just practice shooting things and stuff. So he has some time. I think he has like 4 months to try and train up some guys and have them ready for this war. Right? So then he has in the book a false flag attack in which they have a meeting of the rich, the Politburo, some of their children, some like high-ranking youths, and some old people, right? I got some people in the Communist Party, and I have them meet, and then I blow them up. I mean, they're just straight up, they blow them up. And what a false flag is, right, it's your attack on yourself, like if I'm going to punch myself, Amber Heard style, right? Johnny hit me, right? She didn't have the guts. That's what a false flag is. You damage yourself and say it's someone else as a reason to go to war. This happens in real life. Look up Gulf of Tonkin. America done it. Probably other countries have done it. Your conspiracy theory world is rampant with them, but there are a few confirmed cases, right? So this, again, he uses very true to life, things that he doesn't say like aliens show up, right? It's very realistic. So it makes the book very fun. So they use this false flag attack and start a war. Now they had intended to, upset the inner workings of Germany because they had still some West German operatives from when it was split. But that sort of goes, pear-shaped. It did not work. A lot of stuff doesn't work. This is war. Things you think will work don't work. But they invade Germany. Germany's the linchpin they see to NATO. Now this is, the Iron Curtain is still up. So Ukraine, Yugoslavia, Poland, whatever, all the ones that were behind the Iron Curtain aren't part of this war. They're, Europe as it stands today isn't the Europe of yesterday. So those countries aren't about to help. They're part of the problem. They're seen as this big, big Ruski land. So they just straight invade Germany, and their plan was rapid fire, right? If we could just take Germany very quick. Then in the chaos of what our KGB does to sort of fracture NATO, we'll sort of back out, say we did it because of this attack on our youth, our glorious youth, and when they're doing that, we're going to go take these oil fields and we'll be Gucci, right? That was their thinking. Doesn't go to plan. And And the way it's described, he does a great job of, and it's this video might be shorter, but the book, short video for a long book, is because he spends the time to describe some of these battles. And it's a very good job. Very much like watching, your History Channel, Discovery Channel going over Battle of the Bulge, and all these, the Battle of the Rhine, all these great battles in the world wars. Explains it like that in written form for a fictional war made up of real rules. So, it makes for a very enjoyable read. That's why I rate it so highly. Right, so in this, the West, well, I say we, I mean the West, which is opposite Ruski land. We win air superiority at night. We have better radar-ish setups, right? They're invading, so they don't have the implant in the tech that we have, and we're ripping them a new one, right? Early wins, and we can maintain in the air superiority at night, right? So, but during the day, they have enough surface-to-air missiles to nullify that in the day. So in the day they're making movements. At night they don't got the wherewithal. The war sort of starts to grind to a halt. In some spots we have political appointees, right? I've talked a big game in the Politburo. Now I'm up. If I lose, I'm to blame. They ship me to Siberia. Right? So we have a lot of this. People who don't know what they're doing. People with old mindsets. Happens all the time in actual war. I read a book. I'll cover it at one point. It was an audio book of the Duke of Marlborough, a general back in ye olden day. This happened to him a lot, where the Lord of Gloucestershire or Reading or whatever one of these, King of Stuttgart, he wants to run something for a second. Idiots get involved politically into wars and make a mess. And in the midst of this, you see the military mind rise and have success. This is a true to life action, and he represents it here very well. But the battles are intense, and he keeps with the shifting, right? So we'll go from on the ground Russia to in the air Americans to success to failure and on, sort of stalemates. And there's also sort of like this tech difference, right? Where, Russia has a jack ton of tanks, but they still have old tanks. We have not a lot of assets in country, but our jets can make moves, right? It's very fun. He also has a side story of like a group of Marines in Iceland. Just as, like we have troops stationed in places, and then when the crap hits the fan, you're in the middle of it. Either you're captured, you die, or you're in the middle of it. And these guys end up in the middle of it. And it harkens to, I believe, World War II. I might be wrong. No, it was World War II. There was some kind of like Rock of Gibraltar or something that the British had for a long time. It's this big freaking rock. See if I can find a picture. It's a big freaking rock. They held it since like Napoleon times or whatever. It's a perfect fort. Well, I think the Nazis took it, but the British, thinking they might lose it, put like a secret compartment in here wherein they could leave 3 British guys for, I don't know, years, and they could radio out intel, because if you they poked a little hole in this rock. Now, little, I mean like brick size, tiny, because you don't want it big because they might see it from outside. They made a tiny window, and they would check this window, I don't know, once or twice a day, and then radio out what they saw. And it doesn't sound like a big deal, but if I can look through this window, which gives you this, from the distance, the harbor's just sitting right in front of you, right? It's just a perfect view of the harbor. And if I see XYZ boat, It's got to be here and it can't be there, right? Because it's a big deal in naval warfare is intelligence, where what is, what's it doing, right? And so this harkens back to that, wherein these guys are in Iceland, hiding, running around, just 12 guys, and they can call out like bombing runs once or twice a day. I've seen this many bombers that, and it's just intelligence that we use to say such and such is incoming, France, look out, right? And it ends up being very crucial. The same as this Rock of Gibraltar was. One's real, one's fake, but they both could have been real, right? So it gives you it's such a great feel for a book. What they call it? Verisimilitude. The verisimilitude very high on this book. Now in this, your boy Thomas Clancy tries to get kind of like a romance thing going. Yes, he doesn't do the greatest job, but he's not that kind of a writer. So that doesn't go well, but it also doesn't ruin the book, right? It's just it is what it is. He puts it in. It's some filler, but not much, not really much. But it's sort of true to life. I guess it could have happened. Let's roll with it. It doesn't ruin the book, not one bit. It he also in this book, he does a great job, and for me, I think I read this first. Yes? And then I think I've done a video of the War in the Pacific. The way he describes naval battle. Now I have seen specials, but they use little markers. This boat was here, blah blah blah. What he can do when you add the story, the character element to it, is he gives a great sense of what naval warfare is. The distance is involved, right? So at some point it's the satellite takes a picture, right? And it's however many square miles the satellite can take a picture of. And if it grabs the wake of your boat, even from space, they can start tracking where your boat is. But if they miss it, you could just, you're taking strips out of the ocean and hoping you see a battleship or some evidence of battleships or, the company of them. And you could relay this information to your subs. They can then hunt the boat down. And it's this cat and mouse, this highly tense, because sometimes nothing happens. And sometimes the crap hits the fan. Ships get sunk. There's this whole naval war that's going on parallel to the ground war. Right? Because if we can win the sea, we can get supplies in, and, Russia can't win then. Russia needs to win the sea and then win a fast ground war to get that oil to keep on keeping on. Right? But he does just a great job, and it really got me interested in naval stuff. That's why I got that book. I have the second book of that and some other, nautical nonsense, so to speak. It's just the way he describes both hunting a sub from our perspective, both subs hunting ships from the Ruski perspective. The whole back and forth of this is just tremendously done. And it's one of the reasons why, the book is so long, but it needs to be, right? We read some of these fantasy books and we're describing plates or dresses or something. It's not a lot of that. It's very action orientated. Action packed, I would say, like a good solid movie. It feels like a movie. Or at least like, one of those well-made HBO specials, like a 12 part run. And what a Band of Brothers on HBO. It feels like that. Very real. Highly entertaining. But it's, thick for a reason. You need all that and you're interested. There's not a lot of fluff here. From spy to Ruski to politics to naval warfare to ground warfare. He covers a lot fairly quickly. And I believe this comes down to in the end a bridge, right? A bridge in Germany over the River Wesen or something. He uses real rivers. They're really a problem. If like if this one bridge could have stayed up an hour and a half longer, essentially, the war might have gone completely different. The Allies, the Germans, the British, I think some Dutch, are sort of starved of ammunition. They're fighting very well. They're winning the numbers, right? It's 2-1. But none of that matters if I run out of bullets. And the blockade of these submarines, because the Ruskies can make, I don't know how many submarines. The blockade of the submarines, right? I think at some point he tells of like this mission to shoot a satellite out of the air, like high altitude missile launch, explode a satellite, right? So we get a tactical advantage. We use this advantage to sort of slip stuff in. Their Iceland play, right, which should have given them oversight over sort of the shipping lanes, can't go as well as it needs to because of our little crack squadron. And then it all just comes down to this bridge. So if this one Russian, and I didn't use the names, but they have names all in here, but I didn't feel the point to use them all, right? But they're in here. But it comes down to one Russian commander, if he can get his guys across this bridge, he can maybe win. But then he can't, right? It's just the way it is sometimes in war. And then what it turns into is the aftermath, which to me is just as interesting as the rest. And you learn some of this as well if you study World War One and Two, right? Especially World War One. So many people were dying that it was becoming politically untenable in both England and Germany, right? They were both about a week away from full-on revolution. And I think there was a revolution after World War One in Russia, which led to Stalin and the Iron Wall, right? The Red Curtain. Iron Curtain. Right? So this is very real. Like, if in World War One the Germans could have pushed one more week, England might have given up politically. They might have said, look, it's too many guys. F France, I don't need it. Make a peace and let's all go home. It actually could have gone that way. And so that starts to happen here in this book, where one certain elements, the KGB, various members of the Politburo, understand that the war is lost. Then we just, that's behind us, and we angle for the future. The future of a continued Soviet state. We're going to lose what we lose. They plan to lose, whatever countries they lose. They'll take some losses, but they want to remain after the fact. And maybe some guys need to be cleansed out of the Politburo. We blame who we blame. But it's a very interesting look into that political maneuvering, right? And in a lot of ways, it feels as not as action-packed, but as consequential as any of the battles he describes in the book. And so you end with, right, some Russian talking with an American, a la like MacArthur or some mess, right, or Eisenhower, right, some kind of peace settlement. And I really wanted a second book. Like I think I was saying this earlier. I would have liked this to continue. The setup, right? Like, so I take a chunk of time, add fake history to it. Let's continue that history. And what happens to England, to Germany, to the Eastern Bloc of states, the Ukraines, the Polands? What happens in the Middle East? These terrorists ain't any happier, right? History continues. I would have loved another book just as thick, just on the politics and the threat of a second war, or however else that goes. Does Germany think I need to take some of Russia? I don't know. Does NATO get too big in its head? If we had had this war, and NATO had won a war, Does NATO think too highly of itself and we get like a Euro bloc empire? You don't know. But I would have loved, my boy Tom Clancy to get in on that. But he doesn't. But, so that's I didn't cover, there's no real point to cover the ins and outs of every battle. That's the book. And I, feel like this video is a little bit shorter. But, it's a short video for a long, thick book. Highly entertaining, though. Highly entertaining. Again, if you're that guy. If you're not, this will put you to sleep. You don't want to sit here and read about this boring battle of a thing that never happened. It's not interesting to you, right? But it's a war game with the writer's skill to add character and heartbeat. Heartbeat to a war game. Highly recommend the book. You should be able to find it for cheap. All right. I'm going to leave a little bit of time so that my books can stay on screen a little longer and convince ye all to buy them. Throw some latinum this way. Right? Right. Okay. Talk to you later.